in other countries the same options and information that we give our women in Australia?
Stephen Mayne.
Well, I agree it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous try-on by the Christian lobby. And whatever the laws apply in Australia should also apply to any international aid that we give. So the idea that at the moment only the US and Australia have this ridiculous, strings attached, you can't have anything to do with abortion. It's ridiculous. The Rudd government will get rid of it, and so they should, and we should just stop listening to the bleating of the Christian lobby.
Randa, it's a tough question for someone who's quite a long way into pregnancy, but what do you think?
Glad you didn't say that to me.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's a very paternalistic attitude, and that we should be looking at what these developing countries' demands are when it comes to the disadvantages that women have in having to access unsafe abortions. And I think that we should be providing information and advice about legal and safe abortions, about contraception, about family planning.
Sure.
Tony Burke?
Well, Stephen Mayne might have announced the government's position, but the government hasn't. Well,
Stephen Smith seemed to be indicating that with a stroke of a pen he might be able to change this law.
Legally, there's no doubt he can. What Stephen's done is to set up a process within the caucus where the caucus members are working through these issues. There's passionate and strongly held beliefs on both sides of this, and I won't pretend there aren't. They're working through that now, and we've got a caucus process, and the last thing, given that Stephen's made a decision to not sort of give his pronouncement as a minister as to where he thinks it ought to go, I'm going to pay that process the same respect.
OK, well, I've got to ask you this question then, the obvious one. Should there be a conscience vote in caucus on this, and should all people within caucus abide by the majority of that vote?
Conscience votes apply to a situation where you're then going to have to walk into the parliament and vote on something. This is a situation where, from what you earlier said, which is right, this is a decision that Stephen Smith can simply make. And so that's why we're following the process that we are.
How hot is this debate within caucus right now?
There's some people who are very passionate about it on each side of the argument.
Well, Tony, far be it from me to take a serious approach to any issue, but I do think we ought to recognise the moral complexity of the situation here. A lot of people consider abortion to be the taking of innocent life, and there are a lot of incredibly important and useful things for us to spend our aid money on. There is a legitimate political question as to whether the Australian government should spend money on an activity which outrages the conscience of a large part of the Australian electorate. And I think that's not ridiculous, and it's not inherently foolish, and I'm not surprised that Tony Burke finds that there are passionate disagreements about it in court.
All right, let's go back to our questioner first in the audience there.
While I agree that's the case, if we, as a society in Australia, decide that we can do that, how can we deny that to other people if we say that Australia can do that?
Well, of course, there are lots of things we don't offer to other people. For example, we give aid to China, but we don't help free speech in China, because to do that would be to contradict the policies of the Chinese government. So, the aid budget is limited in all kinds of ways, and I don't think aid ever proceeds on the basis that everything that's available in Australia is available according to our aid. For example, we give aid to majority Muslim countries where we have to respect Muslim sensibilities, which we wouldn't enforce within Australia.
And I think Greg does touch on something there. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that we are in other countries, and we've got to respect their laws and the sovereignty of those countries as well. So it's a very complex issue.
So what's your view, and what's your view in countries where abortion is legal, so they've already come to those conclusions? Should we be providing aid to services that give advice to women about abortions? That's what we're talking about here, not actually funding abortions.
I believe that we should respect the laws of the country, and if those countries have laws that ensure that abortion is legal, then Australia could act accordingly. But in countries where it's not...
So can I just interrupt there? You've got no problem actually with offering this sort of aid?
If it is in accordance with the laws of the country to whom we're offering it, I want to respect the sovereignty of the country. But if it's a country where it's not, then I don't believe Australia should make it available. We've got to respect the sovereignty of the nation to whom we're providing aid. Aid is, after all, for the well-being and the betterment of that community, and the community should have the say.
So you don't think the views of a let's say, a moral minority should dictate, as they have in the past, whether this aid is sent to countries where abortion is legal?
I believe that if it's legal in that country and it's legal in Australia, well, then there should be no impediment.
Because that's not what Brendan Nelson says.
I understand that.
So you've got obviously different position.
Well, obviously, as Tony's indicated, it's an issue on which members of Parliament will have different views. Of course we will. I mean, we wouldn't be the robust democracy we are today if everybody had the same view. I mean, we've just seen it with the Labor Party and the whole question of Fuel Watch, where Martin Ferguson...
Oh, no, you can't change subject like that. I'm sorry. No, you're on live TV now. The audience will respond.
No, my point is this, and I wasn't trying to be political about it, but what...
A little bit. You went from abortion to Fuel Watch, and you're saying it's not political.
Well, it was the last debate in Parliament before I left Canberra tonight, so it was on my mind. But my point was this, that of course you get different views on a whole range of moral, social, economic issues across all parties, and this is one where I wouldn't expect Brendan and I would have exactly the same views.
Have you argued about it?
No, we haven't discussed it.
All right. OK, we have a web question from John from Marylands, New South Wales. As a school teacher who regularly takes students to Parliament House, I'm appalled by the rudeness and the interjection of politicians. How can the politicians set a better example for our students? Well then, I think we'll go to Stephen Mayne first, because you're not a politician, you might get a straight answer.
Look, I think we all get a bit sick of the point scoring that goes on, the interjections and the carry on. I mean, we have an adversarial system. We don't want all the politicians agreeing with each other and patting each other on the back. But I think from the reaction here tonight that people are sick of the pettiness of the point scoring, and we'd like to see you, Julie, occasionally stand up and say, Tony's doing a good job, he would, make a good Prime Minister one day, or, actually give some credit, like actually say maybe...
We'd love to see that.
Kevin Rudd did a really good job on the apology.
Come on,
can you say that?
But let's put this in... Yes, I can say that. But let's put this in perspective. Now that we have televised debates, there is an hour each day, question time, that is televised. The other 18 hours that we're in Parliament working together, it's very productive. And so I think that the introduction of...
Including the Senate estimates, they sound somewhat less than productive.
No, in fact, there is a very serious process underway, not only in question time, but Senate estimates. And sure, some people ham it up for the cameras. But at the end of the day, this is a very robust debate that goes on in Parliament, and there's a very serious purpose behind question time. This is where the opposition of the day holds the government to account, and ministers can be exposed, they can lose their jobs, governments can become less popular, can become more popular as a result of what goes on in question time. It has a very serious purpose, and I've seen the political debate change overnight because of a particular question and answer in question time.
All right, is there anyone out in the audience who's seen question time and thinks it works? Sorry, you're obviously not going to say that. Okay.
No, I actually had a question in the sense that, you just mentioned that before you left Parliament this evening that you guys talked about Fuel Watch, but I mean, realistically, we're talking about reducing the price of fuel. I think it was like 4 or 5 cents per litre. It's
not under Fuel Watch.
Well, under what the Liberal Party's proposed, or under Fuel Watch, or whatever it may be, you've discussed it for 2 weeks. So do you really think that even if the price of fuel was dropped by 5 cents a litre, that's going to save a family maybe $200 over the course of a year? Is it really worth discussing for 2 weeks?
Well, we weren't discussing our proposal. We were actually discussing the government's legislation.
Okay,
but be that as it may,
I think he's focused in on your proposal. Sure. So let's hear whether it's $200 a year. Is that the saving you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Kevin Rudd said it was $1.50 a week.
Well, whatever the saving may be, is it really worth discussing over 2 weeks?
Is it the big issue?
It is an important issue. In 1995, Paul Keating added that 5 cents to the excise. He added it. And then in 2001, the Howard government froze the indexation. Now, that has ended up meaning something like a 17 cents a litre saving over time, and that's significant. What we're suggesting is that the government's tax take on petrol can be less. This is all about how much the government needs to take out of the fuel excise, and we're saying 5 cents a litre. It's not an enormous amount, but it can add up, and to families who are on very tight budgets, $200 a year can mean a lot of money to them.
All right,
it's significant.